Welcome back to Flashpoint. My conversation this morning with Governor Whitmer. You had that crazy span of 3 weeks where all of this stuff was piled together, but it was interesting, the juxtaposition between your State of the State address, where you talked about the improving picture in Michigan, the unemployment rate, manufacturing jobs. A couple nights later, when you talked about the economy as part of the Democratic response to the State of the Union, you seemed to be criticizing what was going on economically. Can you have it both ways?
Well, I think if you listen closely to the State of the State, I did talk about how we still have 43% of our population below the ALICE standards, the United Way ALICE standards. That means 2 out of every 5 people in your neighborhood are really struggling to meet their basic needs of their family. And so you heard me talk about auto jobs, and we celebrate those, but we still have to acknowledge that we've got challenges ahead to make sure that people have opportunity to upskill, to get into unfilled, good-paying jobs right now because we have that skills gap, to ensure that our kids are getting the education that they need. I mean, these are the fundamentals that are still true here in Michigan. I talked about them both in my State of the State and in the State of the Union.
But you get the point that the celebrations are yours, the challenges are President Trump's.
No, I think that the celebrations are all of ours, and the challenges as well are all of ours. And I did both in both speeches, I think, and it was important to me. It wasn't an Trump speech. It was about a vision for America, and I highlighted great things that are happening that are being done in various states across our nation.
You still are coming under quite a bit of criticism for the line item, a number of the line item vetoes, and a lot of people understand that you were trying to make a point with that. Now that the budget's come out, there has been some money that's gone back to Pure Michigan, but for instance, the autism community still feels like you've left them hanging. In fact, I was emceeing the night that you were at the Autism Alliance speech, and you kind of told them, you promised their support, as they had come to expect, I think, under Lieutenant Governor Calley, and then they find themselves a little high and dry. I think there's a lot of people that felt like they were having their lives played with so that you could make a point to the legislature.
Well, if anyone feels like that, that's unfortunate, and it's not true. The fact of the matter is, I didn't use vetoes to make a point. I used vetoes to balance a budget and to do the hard, important work that state government does of keeping people safe. The budgets that the legislature sent me, they wouldn't negotiate with me and sent me budgets that just took $50 million out of the corrections budget. Just took it out, like there are savings there. That's closing a prison without a plan about what you do with the population. Took $50 million out of our health care budget without funding their own Medicaid work requirements. I had to cobble together every general fund dollar that I could in order to do those fundamentals and to not, pull people off of health care or close prisons without a plan for what you do with returning citizens. And so I did what I had to do to make the budget make sense. We ultimately negotiated to get those dollars back into those departments, which gave us the ability to fund things like the autism line. And that's important. My original budget had that in it. Because the legislature's shenanigans, I had to fix it. It ended up with it in it, and it's also is reflected in the budget that I introduced. And so I think people see that those really are the values that I have.
I want to make sure we get to the education piece of this. You put quite a bit of money for, especially I think a lot of teachers saw that you were thinking about the fact that so many of them spend so much money out of their own pockets, and you're trying to help them with that. But I want to get to this reading problem that we have. The new law that went into effect in 2016 shows us that we got about 5,000 third graders who are in danger of being held back because they're not meeting. And you're being accused of finding a way around that law so that we're kind of making sure that we don't have that many people failing. Wasn't that of course we can always change the standards, but the point of the law, wasn't it, was we got to make sure that people are reading at the level they need to. If they fail and can't make it, well, that's the standard we agreed to.
The goal of the law is to make sure kids read. However, the punitive nature of it is actually going to do a disservice to the children of Michigan. When you hold a child back, that has lifetime consequences. On top of it, they didn't wrap kids with the kinds of support they need to be successful. So not only is this law going to have a lifetime effect on these children, it means that parents don't have information so they can make the best choice for their own child, which is what we're trying to remedy. And we're trying to ensure that
But
kids
a disagreement with the law means changing a law rather than flouting it, doesn't it?
And one other, outcome of this law is that it disproportionately hurts kids of color. And so there are a lot of problems with this law. I'm working with the Skillman Foundation and the Max Fisher Foundation to educate parents, to wrap kids with the supports they need to be successful. It's not about flouting the law, it's about empowering parents and ensuring that kids are successful, not just penalized for a system that hasn't been prioritized to meet their needs.
Lastly, we've had Secretary Benson on a couple of times to talk about our readiness for the elections. Are you concerned about our ability to handle all of the absentee ballots that are now legal and eligible without changing the way that we calculate them?
Well, I am. I know that there is been some discussion about, with these early ballots, perhaps they can start opening maybe a day in advance so we can have timely results. I understand that the Senate Majority Leader is opposed to that. I do think it's going to be a challenge, but I have great confidence in Secretary Benson.
Governor, it was always good to have you here. I've got many more things, so we will have you back again, hopefully, in the near future.
I hope so.
Yeah, thanks very much.
Thanks.
We'll bring Debbie Dingell in, the Congresswoman, would like to change the Michigan primary. We'll talk about it next on Flashpoint.